It started with something so subtle, I almost didn't notice it. That's how these things get you quietly, gently, like a draft under the door you don't feel until your skin's already cold. Good evening, friends. I'm Mr. Narratory, and I'll be your voice tonight as we drift gently towards sleep. If these stories help you relax or fall asleep a little easier, consider liking and subscribing. It really means a lot. Tell me in the comments, what time is it for you right now? And do you have any little bedtime rituals? Now, settle in, get comfortable, close your eyes if you'd like, because it's time for tonight's story. For me, it was a morning like any other. Dark, cold, February. I woke up at 5:45, just enough time to shower, make coffee, and catch the 6:40 bus that took me straight into the city. I'd been doing this for nearly 2 years. Same bus, same stop, same seat when I could get it second row window side. I liked watching the city slowly wake up while listening to podcasts or music, zoning out before the chaos of the office. That Tuesday, I boarded like usual. The bus was maybe a third full, the way it always is at that time. I took my seat and glanced up out of habit, just scanning the other passengers. And that's when I saw him. A man standing near the back door, even though there were plenty of seats. That was the first thing I noticed. No one stands unless they have to. But he stood, gripping the overhead rail with one hand, the other stuffed in the pocket of a worn green parka. Black baseball cap pulled low, chin tucked down. I wouldn't have paid him much attention, except for how still he was. He didn't shift, didn't look at his phone, didn't sway with the motion of the bus, just still, like a statue trying to pass as a man. At first I thought maybe he was just one of those people who ride in silence. Maybe he was coming off a night shift. Maybe he didn't want to sit next to anyone. But something about the way his body was angled, it was like he was facing me. Not quite directly, but not quite away either. Just enough to give me that faint itch on the back of my neck. I turned my gaze back to the window and tried to ignore it. The next day, he was there again. Same spot, same coat, same eerie stillness. That alone was enough to jolt me. I mean, sure, people have routines, but I'd never seen him before that week. And now, 2 days in a row, standing in the exact same place? I glanced at him again, longer this time. He wasn't looking at me, not really. His head was down, brim of the cap shadowing most of his face, but his body was still slightly turned, angled, focused. I brushed it off. People are weird. Maybe he was just shy. Maybe he had a tic, or some kind of social anxiety. I told myself all the things we tell ourselves when we don't want to believe our gut, because my gut was telling me something was wrong, and I didn't want to listen. By Friday, I was starting to feel uneasy. Before I even left the house, I was listening for footsteps that weren't mine, watching shadows move where they shouldn't. And sure enough, when I boarded the 6:40, he was already there. Same outfit, same posture, standing. I tried to ignore him, but something inside me twisted when I sat down and realized he had shifted a step closer. Not much, just a step, but enough for me to feel it. I kept my head down and stared at my phone, even though I wasn't reading anything. The next Monday, I tried something different. I walked to an earlier stop, 4 blocks from my usual one. It meant waking up 10 minutes earlier and facing colder air, but I wanted to test something. I boarded the bus early, grabbed a seat, and waited. For a few glorious minutes, it felt like it had worked. No sign of him, no green parka, no black cap, just silence, the low hum of the engine, and the city still wrapped in sleep. But then, 3 stops later, he got on. I watched him board from the corner of my eye, and my stomach turned. He didn't scan the bus like someone finding a place to sit. He walked straight to the back door, grabbed the rail, and stood. Same place, same position, like nothing had changed. Like he knew I would be there. It's hard to describe the kind of fear that creeps in when you realize you're being watched, really watched. Not glanced at, not noticed in passing, but observed, tracked. I wanted to confront him, but I didn't know what to say. "Why are you on my bus?" Sounded insane. "Why do you stand like that?" Made me sound paranoid. I didn't have proof, just a feeling. And feelings don't get restraining orders. That night, I didn't sleep well. Every creak in the hallway made me sit up in bed. I double-checked the locks. I pulled the curtains shut. I told myself I was being stupid, that I was projecting, that thousands of people took that bus and I wasn't special. But then again, thousands of people don't stare at one person, same time every day, never missing a ride. By the end of that week, I started writing it all down. The dates, the details, what he wore, where he stood. I created a spreadsheet. I told myself it was for Meadow ease my mind, to prove there was nothing going on. But deep down, I think I knew I was building a case. Because something told me this man wasn't going away, and I had no idea just how far he'd follow. The week after I started the spreadsheet, things got worse. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just worse in the way a bad feeling deepens when you realize it's not going away. He was there every morning, without fail. Same coat, same cap, always standing. Sometimes closer, sometimes farther, but always within my line of sight. I'd gotten into the habit of pretending not to notice him. Eyes on my phone, earbuds in with no music playing, listening for movement, for breath, for anything unusual. There's something surreal about watching your daily routine decay from the inside out while everything around you stays the same. Same street, same stops, same people. But I was unraveling. I started changing things. One morning, I left 10 minutes early and caught the 6:30 instead. My chest loosened when I saw the bus mostly empty, my usual spot by the window untouched. For 5 stops, I let myself believe I'd outrun him. I even smiled a little stupidly, like someone who just convinced themselves a dream didn't mean anything. But on the 6th stop, he got on. The green coat, the black cap, the slow, deliberate way he grabbed the overhead rail. He didn't look at me, not directly, but I could feel it again, his presence pulling at the edge of my awareness, like a draft under a closed door. It wasn't just the bus anymore. I noticed him once across the street from my apartment, just standing there in the early evening, head down, as if waiting for someone. I ducked behind my curtain and watched him for 5 full minutes. He didn't move. Then he turned and walked away without ever looking up. I told myself it wasn't him. Couldn't be. But then I saw the same shoes the next morning on the bus-worn gray sneakers heel collapsing slightly inward. He had a limp, barely noticeable, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I started leaving notes for myself around the apartment post-its with things like, "You're not imagining this," and "Stay sharp." I didn't tell friends, not yet. It still felt too thin, too circumstantial. Who'd believe me? That a man riding public transit might be, what, following me? Watching me? For what reason? I couldn't answer that. And yet, I knew I was right. One night, I stayed at work late. We had a last-minute pitch, and the office was quiet, half-lit. I welcomed the distraction, the normalcy of stress. I thought, maybe this'll shake things up. If I catch a later bus, maybe I'll finally get a break. At 9:10, I boarded with 3 other passengers. It was quiet, cold, and felt safe. I sat in the back this time, farther than usual. I watched the doors open at the next stop, and for a second, I thought I saw him. Just a flash of green as someone passed by the windows. But no one boarded. My muscles relaxed. Until the stop after that. He stepped on like nothing had changed. Same coat, same limp, same downward tilt of the head. But this time he didn't go to the back door. This time he sat down. First time I'd seen him sit. 4 rows ahead of me, across the aisle. And then, very slowly, he turned his head just slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough that I knew. He was looking at me through the reflection in the window. It was the first time he acknowledged me directly. Subtly, but undeniably. I stared at the back of his head, frozen. My mouth was dry, my fingers numb. I reached for my phone and opened the camera app, pretending to check messages. I lifted it slowly, angled to catch a reflection. I got a blurry imagine of him clear, but enough for me to remember that moment was real. My brain scrambled for what to do. Get off? Stay on? Call someone? But who do you call when all someone's done is ride the same bus as you? No law against that. I got off 2 stops early. I didn't even look to see if he followed. I walked fast, cutting through side streets, glancing behind me every other step. My building felt like a fortress when I finally reached it. I slammed the door, locked the deadbolt, leaned against the frame, and listened to my own breathing. That night I didn't sleep. I left a lamp on in every room. I checked the peephole 3 times an hour. I even called my sister, pretending I just wanted to catch up. She asked if I was okay. I said yes. The next morning, I didn't take the bus. I called in sick. Sat by my window with coffee and binoculars I hadn't touched in years. I watched the street like a hunter in a blind. I waited until 6:40 came and went. The bus pulled up, passengers climbed on, and there clear as day he was again, walking past the stop, not getting on, just walking, like he was checking to see if I would. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a coincidence. He was looking for me. I didn't leave the apartment for 2 days after that. I worked from home, called it a cold. My boss didn't question it, no one does anymore, not since remote became the fallback. I kept my curtains drawn and stayed mostly in the living room, sipping lukewarm coffee and staring at the screen, pretending to be busy. But my eyes kept drifting back to the window, watching, waiting. I saw him 3 times that week, never long. Once across the street, standing beside a phone pole, Another time, further down the block, walking slowly, like someone unfamiliar with the neighborhood. And once more, this one stayed with me just outside the convenience store near my building. He wasn't buying anything. He stood near the entrance, back to the wall looking down at his phone, or pretending to. I watched from the second floor window and took pictures on my phone. Grainy, sure, but enough to make out the green parka, the posture, the hat pulled low. I brought the photos to the police. I sat in a gray plastic chair in a precinct lobby that smelled like old paper and burnt coffee. I explained everything. The bus rides, the repetition, the photo outside my building. I expected skepticism, and I got it. Has he made contact with you? Threatened you? The officer asked, without looking up from his notepad. No, but he's following me. Any verbal interaction? No. Has he entered your property? No. He sighed through his nose. The kind of sound someone makes when they're trying to be patient but failing. Look, I'm not saying it's not creepy, but he hasn't technically done anything illegal. Could just be coincidence. A guy on your route who walks the same streets. I wanted to scream. Coincidence doesn't make a man stand in silence on a bus for 2 weeks straight. Coincidence doesn't make him appear outside my building when I stop showing up for the ride he always takes. But I nodded. I thanked him. I walked out. I didn't know what else to do. That night, I ordered pepper spray online. I installed a door jammer. Bought a second chain lock. Paranoia is strange, how quickly it becomes ritual. I checked my locks every hour. I slept with my phone charging beside my pillow. My keys were always in my pocket, even inside the apartment. It's exhausting, the constant readiness, like bracing for an earthquake that never comes. On Friday, I convinced myself to take the bus again. I couldn't hide forever. I picked a hoodie with a big drawstring and pulled it tight around my face. I wore sunglasses, even though it was barely dawn. I left from a different stop again, walked 6 blocks east. When the 6:40 came, I hesitated before boarding, but I did it. He wasn't there. For 20 minutes, I rode in silence. No green parka, no heavy presence lingering behind me. I dared to breathe easy. Maybe it was over. Maybe I scared him off by going to the police. Maybe he was just a weirdo with a routine that happened to overlap with mine. But when I got off downtown and walked to my building, I noticed something stuck in the frame of the front door. A small, folded piece of paper. No name, no markings. Just wedged into the crack, tucked so subtly it could have been missed by anyone not paying close attention. I stood frozen for a full 30 seconds before touching it. My fingers shook as I opened the fold. 3 words, handwritten in shaky all-caps letters. You switched stops. I dropped it. I didn't even realize I'd done it until I was inside, my back against the locked door, my lungs refusing to empty. He knew. He had been watching not just the bus, but me, my habits, my choices. I hadn't escaped his notice. I'd simply shifted the board, moved a piece, but the game was still going. That night, I didn't turn the lights on. I sat in the dark, staring at the door, phone in my lap, every muscle tight. I kept expecting a knock, or the sound of keys, or worse, nothing at all. But nothing happened. Not that night. The next morning, I received an email. No sender name, just a random sequence of letters. No subject line. One attachment. A photo of me standing at the new bus stop, looking at my phone, taken from across the street. No text, no explanation, no demand. Just the photo. I stared at it for nearly an hour. I zoomed in, looked at the angle. Judging by the height and the lens distortion, it was taken from a distance. Probably a phone camera. Maybe second floor of a building. I pulled up Google Maps. Looked at what businesses were across from the stop. An empty storefront. A laundromat. A cheap motel. He'd been close. Close enough to see me. Close enough to photograph me. I wanted to believe it was a prank. Some sick joke, but I couldn't. I knew. My skin knew, my blood knew. He wasn't just watching me. He was warning me. There's a specific kind of silence that comes after fear. It's not peace. It's paralysis. That's where I lived for the next few days. Strapped in the gap between knowing I was being watched and having any idea what to do about it. I didn't ride the bus. I didn't go into work. I barely moved from the couch except to eat, use the bathroom, or check the locks. The note in the door frame and the emailed photo spun in my head like a warning siren I couldn't switch off. Someone had been following me for weeks, documenting my every move, and now they wanted me to know it. The email address had been a scrambled string of numbers and letters, nothing to trace, nothing to reply to. I reported it to the police again, this time with the image attached. The officer was more serious this time, asked more questions. They promised to look into it, but again, the reality was thin. No name, no physical harm, no proof the man in the photo was stalking me, and still no crime. I left with a card, a case number, and zero comfort. I finally told my sister. I hadn't wanted to worry her, but I needed someone to know what was happening. She lives 3 hours away, has a husband and 2 little kids. She offered to come up right away, bring the family, stay a few nights. I told her no, not yet. I wasn't ready to admit how scared I really was. Instead, I asked if I could come down to visit her for the weekend, just to clear my head. She said yes, immediately. I didn't tell her I bought the train ticket under a fake name. I paid in cash, used an old duffel bag, and left through the back of the building, checking every direction before calling a car. I don't know what I expected. A chase? A confrontation? Something cinematic? But no one followed. The train ride was quiet. The visit was calm. Her kids gave me something to focus on, small joys, loud chaos, temporary distraction. I even slept. It was the first time in weeks I didn't dream of bus windows and green parkas. But peace doesn't last when someone's already invaded your reality. When I came home Sunday night, something was different. Nothing was wrong. Exactly. No broken locks, no windows pried open, but I could feel it. A shift. The air in the apartment was heavier. The smell was off. Not bad, just different. Like someone else had breathed in the space while I was gone. I checked everything, drawers, closets, under the bed. Nothing missing, nothing new, no signs of entry. But my skin crawled as if I was being watched from just behind my own shoulder. And then I found it, tucked into the very bottom of my laundry basket, beneath a pile of dirty clothes I hadn't touched in over a week, was a small plastic cap, dark gray, oval shape. At first, I thought it was a clothing tag, maybe something from a jacket or belt. But when I held it up to the light, I saw what it was. The lens cover from a mini camera. It didn't belong to me. I don't own a camera like that. I don't even own a webcam outside my phone and laptop. I stared at it for what felt like hours, flipping it over in my palm, over and over, like it would reveal something more. But it didn't. It was just an object that shouldn't have been there, which meant someone had been in my home. I tore the apartment apart. I checked every vent, every smoke detector. Under the counters, inside the light fixtures, even behind framed photos on the wall. I didn't find a camera, but I did find signs-stony ones. A smudge on the back of my bedroom mirror, a small scratch on the frame of the hallway painting, a thumbprint on the inside of my bathroom cabinet. Someone had been in here, close enough to touch my things, close enough to leave pieces of themselves behind. I reported it again, now more frantic, more demanding. The police came to the apartment this time, looked around. They took the lens cap. They nodded and made notes. And again, no signs of forced entry. "Do you lock your windows?" they asked. "Could it be a maintenance worker?" No. I knew my building. I knew its sounds, its patterns. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. They said they'd notified the landlord. Suggested a security system. I installed one the next day. A motion camera for the living room. A lock sensor for the door. An app that pinged my phone anytime the door opened or someone moved inside the space. It made me feel a little better, safer, but only for a little while, because that night, just after midnight, my phone pinged. Motion detected living room camera. I sat up so fast I felt dizzy. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and opened the app. There was nothing there. The feed was black for a second, then flickered, then returned to normal. Empty room. Just the faint glow from the microwave clock and the outline of the couch. No intruder, no movement. But when I reviewed the recording, just for a moment, maybe half a second, I saw it. A shape, a silhouette, standing at the edge of the frame, facing the camera, and then gone. No sound, no door opening, no alert from the door sensor. Just there and then not. I watched the clip a dozen times, sent it to my sister. She called immediately, panicked, telling me to leave, to call someone, to come stay with her permanently. But I couldn't leave, because I knew now this wasn't random. It was personal. And whoever he was, he didn't just want to watch me anymore. He wanted me to know it. There's something uniquely disturbing about knowing someone has been inside your home and not broken in, not smashed a window or forced a door, but simply been there, like a shadow slipping in and out while you were looking the other way. That feeling doesn't fade with time. It seeps into everything, like smoke. I stopped using the bathroom with the door closed. I slept with the lights on in the living room. I didn't trust silence anymore. It felt too close to the quiet I imagined he moved in. The security company said the camera must have glitched. A flicker, a sensor issue. These systems are 99% accurate, they told me, but nothing's perfect. I wanted to scream at them. The footage was still on my phone. Half a second of a chapar, human shape standing still and staring, before the screen blinked and it vanished. The police took the video. I don't know if they ever watched it. Maybe they filed it away. Maybe they just added it to my ever-growing folder of paranoia. I didn't care anymore. I knew what I saw, and I knew what I felt, that he was getting closer. I stopped taking the bus completely, walked to work when I could, took ride shares when it rained. My boss started asking questions, why I was late, why I looked like I hadn't slept. I gave excuses. I made up a story about a sick relative. Anything to avoid explaining the truth, because the truth made people uncomfortable. Nobody wants to hear about a stranger who hasn't done anything illegal but is slowly unraveling your sense of safety. People like clean problems, things they can solve with advice or sympathy. Not this. This was messy, uncertain, and getting worse. Then came the package. No return address. Just a plain brown envelope sealed with packing tape. It was waiting for me in my mailbox on a Thursday afternoon, and my hands went cold the second I saw it. I brought it upstairs, locked the door behind me, and stared at it for almost 10 minutes before opening it. Inside was a single item, a USB flash drive. No note, no label, just the drive, smooth and black, cold to the touch. I plugged it into an old laptop I hadn't used in over a year, just in case, and opened the folder inside. There were 10 video files, each one named only with a date. My heart started pounding before I clicked anything, because the dates weren't random. They were recent, within the last 2 weeks. I opened the first video. It was footage of me on the bus, taken from behind 2 rows back, angled slightly to the side, but unmistakably me. I recognized my coat, my backpack, the way I sat, slouched, earbuds in. I watched myself stare out the window, unaware that I was being filmed. The second video was from a different day. Same bus, same angle, but closer. The man filming had moved 1 row up. By the third video, the angle had shifted completely. He was filming from directly across the aisle. The quality was poor, but that made it worse. I could feel the proximity, the invasion. He'd been filming me for days, and I'd never noticed. The 5th video made me stop breathing. It wasn't on the bus. It was inside my apartment. The angle was low, like the camera had been placed on the floor behind the couch. The video showed my legs as I walked from the kitchen into the hallway. I wasn't wearing shoes. It was nighttime. I paused in front of the mirror, checked my phone, and walked out of frame. That was it. 15 seconds, but enough to know it wasn't just my imagination anymore. He'd been in here when I was home, while I was awake. I watched the rest. Some were from the hallway outside my unitangles that showed me unlocking my door, fumbling with keys, unaware. One was from the building across the street, zoomed in through my living room window, and the last only 2 days prior was the worst. It showed me sleeping, The camera was placed somewhere in the bedroom, maybe on the dresser, maybe the floor. I was curled up under the blankets, breathing softly, mouth slightly open. The room was dark, but I could see enough. And then, at the very end of the video, a figure moved in the corner, just barely. A shoulder, a hand, and then the video cut off. I ripped the USB from the laptop and threw it across the room. I don't remember the next few minutes. I only remember finding myself on the floor, back against the wall, knees pulled to my chest, my own breathing drowning out every other sound. I called the police again, told them everything. This time, they took it more seriously. An officer arrived, took the drive, and told me they'd assigned someone to patrol the area. Said I might want to stay somewhere else for a few days. But where do you run when someone's already proven they can find you, enter your home, and watch you while you sleep? I stayed at a friend's place that night. I didn't tell her everything, just enough for her to let me crash on her couch. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening for sounds that didn't belong. I felt like a hunted animalis wide open, heart stuck in my throat, waiting for something to pounce. In the morning, I got a text. No number, just a scrambled, untraceable string again. The message said, "I miss our mornings." That was it. Nothing more. I stared at it for a long time. And for the first time since this began, I cried. Not out of fear, but because I realized this man didn't want to hurt me. Not yet. He wanted me to notice, to feel him, to acknowledge his presence, his obsession, his silent ritual. And I had. Now, we weren't strangers anymore, and that was exactly what he wanted. I didn't go home for 3 days. Stayed on couches, spare rooms, wherever I could convince someone to host me without asking too many questions. I rotated locations, never slept in the same place twice, told my boss I was dealing with a personal emergency and needed time. No one pushed back. People avoid the truth when it starts to sound too dark to fix. I checked in with the police twice. They said they were still investigating, that someone was keeping an eye on the area. I knew they meant well, but they were watching my apartment from outside. I needed someone inside my head, inside the fear, because that's where he was. Not just outside my windows or behind a camera he'd taken up residence in my mind. A quiet squatter in the halls of my thoughts, always there, even when I wasn't thinking about him. The 6th night, I broke. I was staying at a co-worker's place. She had a guest room, an extra key, and a big golden retriever who seemed to sense how badly I needed comfort. We were watching TV, or at least the TV was on. I wasn't absorbing any of it. Every time the dog barked at a sound in the hallway, I jolted. I kept checking the blinds, kept refreshing my security app. And then, at 11:43 p.m., my phone vibrated. One notification, a single image attachment, no subject, no message. It was a picture of me, taken from the sidewalk, through the living room window of the apartment I was currently in. I stared at it, trying to process the timeline. I had walked past that window only minutes earlier. The angle was perfect, taken from across the street, behind a tree. It was dark, grainy, but it was me. I showed my friend. She gasped, pulled the blinds, locked the door. I don't remember much of what I said, only that I was shaking. Something in me broke that night, not with panic, but with resignation. He was watching, not just my home, but me. Wherever I went, he knew where I was. He wanted me to know that. I went back to my own apartment the next morning. I don't know why. Maybe because I needed to reclaim it. Maybe because I didn't want to be afraid anymore. The place smelled stale, like time had frozen inside. I walked slowly through each room, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom. Nothing seemed out of place. But I didn't trust that. I knew what he was capable of slipping in and out like vapor. I pulled open drawers, checked behind paintings again, ran my hands along vents, looked under rugs, inside shoes. I found nothing. Until I opened the fridge. Taped to the inside of the door was a Polaroid photo. Another picture of me, but not recent. It was older, at least a month. I recognized the outfit, something I'd worn in early January. I was sitting on the bus, same row, same seat, earbuds in, head against the window, sleeping. And behind me, in the blurry background, was the shadow of a figure. Him, his shape, his coat, just barely visible. He hadn't just been following me for weeks. It had been months. The thought made my knees buckle. I sat on the kitchen floor, photo in hand, shaking. That's when the phone rang. Unknown number. No caller ID. I let it ring. And again. And again. 10 times that day. No voicemails. Just that same number calling in silence. I started to break down around midnight. I sat in the hallway, back against the wall, lights off. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't spoken aloud in hours. I felt hollow. And then I remembered something. Something small. Something stupid. 2 weeks ago, I'd started leaving my apartment key in the potted plant outside my door. A spare. For emergencies. My stomach turned to ice. I leapt to the front door and pulled the pot down. Dug through the dirt. The key was gone. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe minutes, maybe hours. I don't even remember locking the door, just that I kept looking through the peephole over and over as if I could see him. At 8 a.m., the door sensor chimed. Front door opened. Then, 3 seconds later, front door closed. I screamed. I grabbed the pepper spray, the baseball bat I kept under the bed. I ran through the apartment, heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. Nothing. No one there. Every window locked. Every room empty. But on the coffee table, dead center, was another Polaroid. This one showed the hallway outside my bedroom, taken from inside the apartment. The perspective matched the height of a crouching person. In the photo, I was walking out of the bathroom, towel around my waist, mid-step. It had been taken the night before. I sank to the floor and sobbed. There was no more denying it. He had the key. He had access. He could come and go whenever he wanted. And I'd been sleeping while he did. The next morning I packed a bag. Not a suitcase. Just essentials. A go bag. I didn't call anyone. I didn't write a note. I just walked out. I took a cab to a hotel 10 miles away. Checked in under a different name. Paid in cash. Kept the blinds closed, the lights low. No patterns, no schedule. That night, I sat on the bed staring at the wall until I heard a soft knock on the door. 3 gentle taps. Nothing more. I didn't move, didn't speak. I waited. After 5 full minutes, I finally approached and looked through the peephole. No one was there, but on the floor was a folded piece of paper. I opened it with trembling fingers, and inside, scrawled in the same shaky all-caps handwriting, were 4 words. You can't hide forever. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a second. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed with the note in my lap, staring at the door, watching the sliver of light beneath it like it might suddenly vanish or stretch wide with footsteps. The hallway outside was quiet, too quiet for a building that size. The hum of the ice machine down the corridor was the only sign that life still existed beyond my room. My heart never really stopped pounding. It didn't come in waves anymore. It just stayed elevated, like my body had finally accepted a new baseline of fear. I knew I couldn't stay there. He had found me. Again, in a different part of the city, with a fake name. No shared addresses or pattern sand, he still knew where I was. That's when I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just about where I went. It was how I moved, my habits, my body language, the subtle ways we all live like open books without realizing it. I had spent so long trying to outsmart him geographically when the truth was far more disturbing. He knew me, the way I walked, how I checked my phone, what I did when I thought I was alone. He had studied me like a project, an experiment, and I had helped him unknowingly for months. I checked out of the hotel before the sun came up, left through the side entrance, head down, hood up. I didn't go home. I didn't go to work. I took a train, going anywhere. I ended up 2 hours away, in a city I'd never visited, and rented a room in a rundown motel that smelled like mildew and something dead in the vents. But at least it was anonymous. I paid cash, gave no ID, didn't even give my real name. I turned off my phone, bought a cheap burner at a gas station, and used it only once to text my sister. Something vague like, "I'm okay, just need space." I didn't want to pull her into this any more than I already had. The room had no security system, no app, just an old sliding bolt and a broken chain lock. But in some twisted way, that made me feel better. I sat in the corner for hours, watching the door, convinced that if I stared long enough, I could will time to slow down. I didn't turn the lights on. I didn't unpack. I just waited. Around 10 p.m., I turned the TV on for noise. A bad sitcom, volume low. That's when I noticed something strange. I had placed my duffel bag on the chair by the window when I arrived. Now, it was on the floor, slightly open. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't moved. My breath caught. I knelt slowly and opened it. Everything was there. Clothes, toothbrush, book. But there was something new. At the very bottom of the bag, beneath my shirt, was another Polaroid. My stomach flipped. It was a photo of me, taken just a few hours earlier, walking out of the train station with my head down. The angle was elevated, like from a stairwell or security catwalk. I turned it over. This time, something was written on the back in the same erratic handwriting. "You're not that hard to find." I dropped the photo, backed up into the corner, My hands shook uncontrollably. He had followed me across cities, across transit systems. He knew where I was within hours. There was no pattern left to break, no move I could make that wouldn't be predicted. I had never felt more helpless in my life. There was no logic to this anymore, just a dark, relentless certainty that wherever I went, he would be watching. I didn't sleep. Again. Every creak in the walls, every gust of wind against the cheap windows sent spikes of adrenaline through me. I held the burner phone in my hand like it could protect me. At some point around 4 a.m., I decided I couldn't stay another day. I packed, waited until morning, then boarded a bus headed back toward the city, back toward home. Because as much as I feared returning, I knew something had to change. Running wasn't working. I needed to take control. I arrived back at my apartment just after 9 a.m. I was surprised to find everything exactly where I'd left it. No new Polaroids, no signs of entry. For the first time in a week, I allowed myself to shower. Eat something. I didn't relax, not really, but I was functioning. I stayed off my phone. I used the burner only to check for updates from the police. Nothing. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't dared to before. I started going through the footage on my security app. Every saved clip, every motion detection alert. Hundreds of them. Most were blank, just a flicker of shadows, the cat walking through before I rehomed her temporarily, or distant city noise. But one clip dated 3 days earlier, when I had been staying in the hotel, was different. It showed the front door slowly opening. There was no figure in the frame, no visible body entering. But then, like a horror film, a single hand reached around the edge of the door, gloved, slow, intentional. It reached up and placed something just inside, on the small table by the door, and then the door closed. I scrubbed through the footage, zoomed in, heart pounding. What had been placed there? It was hard to tell, but I realized I hadn't checked the drawers near the door since I got back. I stood up, legs heavy, and walked over, pulled open the top drawer. Inside, sitting neatly on top of an old stack of receipts, was a flash drive, identical to the last one. Same model, same smooth black surface. No markings, no note, no message. I stared at it for a long time, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt something new. Not fear, not panic, but anger, because this was a game to him, a performance, and he wanted me to play along. But I was done following his script. It was time to flip the page. I didn't plug in the flash drive right away. For the first time, I didn't rush to see what was inside, didn't let the panic dictate my every move. I set it on the table and just stared at it. It sat there, small and silent, like a trigger with no instructions. He wanted me to open it. That was obvious. And for weeks, I had been dancing to his rhythm, reacting to every move he made like a puppet with a frayed string. But something shifted in me when I saw that drive in my drawer. He had broken into my home again, left another message, another breadcrumb. But the moment I realized I hadn't even noticed that he'd come and gone while I was away, and I'd walked back into his carefully curated stage set. I understood. I had one advantage left, the illusion that I was still afraid. So I didn't open it. I let it sit. That whole day, I went about my life like I was still unraveling. I didn't go to the police. I didn't call anyone. I cleaned, showered, ate, as if I was rebuilding some quiet part of myself that he hadn't touched yet. I needed clarity. I needed focus. Because if I was going to fight back, I couldn't afford to be broken anymore. I needed to see him, understand him, predict him. By midnight, I made up my mind. I opened an old laptop, disconnected it from Wi-Fi, and plugged in the flash drive. This time, there weren't videos, no folders, just a single file, a text document titled Sleep. I opened it. Inside was a journal. Not mine is. Dated entries spanning back nearly 4 months. Short staccato observations. Some were one-liners, others were paragraphs. Each one focused on me, my routines, my outfits, the way I walked, talked, scratched my head, scrolled through my phone. It was like reading a distorted mirror of my life, written by someone who studied me like a bug under glass. Here's a sample of what I read. 12:2. He switched his shampoo. Smells like lavender now. Stands still longer in the shower. 7 minutes average. 12:14. He checks the window 3 times before leaving. Always 3. OCD, maybe? 1. 5. He listens to true crime. Volume too high. Can hear it from outside the door. 1:22. He didn't see me at the bus stop. Wore the red scarf again. My favorite. 2:1. He's scared now. It's beautiful. Page after page. Meticulous. Disturbing. Some entries were deeply animated, describing moments I didn't even remember, things I hadn't shared with anyone. Like how I always bite the inside of my cheek when I'm stressed, or that I hum softly when I cook. There were entries about the layout of my apartment, the hiding spots he'd considered for his cameras, the places he liked to stand and watch. One entry, dated only a week before, simply read, "She doesn't know I've been inside while she sleeps, but she's starting to feel it." I don't know how long I read. It felt endless. My mouth was dry, my chest tight. But there was something else buried in the uneasy, a grim clarity. He needed me to know. This wasn't about violence. Not yet. This was about control, ownership. And now he had escalated again, invited me deeper into his world. But I saw something else in those entries, something he might not have intended. Pattern. He had routines too. He always approached at night, always left something behind. He never confronted me directly. He needed distance, surveillance, observation. He never broke anything, never left a mess. He was methodical, proud, precise. And that gave me an idea. I spent the next day preparing. I didn't go to the police. I knew by now that his violations existed in the in-between. Just enough to terrify, never enough to charge. But I did go to a friend. Someone I trusted implicitly. Someone who worked in tech. I gave him the drive. I asked if he could trace anything, metadata, camera logs, locations, file creation times. He said he'd try. I didn't expect much, but I needed to know something, anything. That night, I made sure my apartment looked just like it had every other night. Lights low, curtains drawn, pajamas on. I moved naturally, cooked dinner, washed dishes, brushed my teeth, all with the subtle awareness that I might not be alone. But this time, I had a plan. A hidden camera of my own, small, black, taped beneath the table by the door, the same place he liked to leave his little messages, motion triggered, recording directly to a local SD card. No network, no signals, just silence and capture. And then I went to bed. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in the dark, heart pounding, eyes wide open, straining to hear anything. At 3:14 a.m. I heard it. The softest click of metal against metal. The sound of a key turning in a lock. The sound of my front door opening. I didn't move. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. I could hear him breathing. Not heavy, controlled. Measured. Like someone savoring the moment. He paused in the hallway. I knew what he'd do next. He always left something. The soft scrape of paper against wood. Then silence. I didn't hear the door close. I didn't hear him leave. But I knew he was gone. I waited until morning. When the sun came up, I got out of bed, walked to the front door, and there it was, a new note, folded just like before. I didn't open it. I went straight to the table, removed the SD card, uploaded the footage to my laptop, and pressed play. For the first time, I saw him, fully, no blur, no silhouette, no trick of the light. He was about my height, early 40s maybe, unshaven, thin frame, clothes that hung loose like they used to fit better once, the green parka, the black hat. He moved with the casual familiarity of someone who belonged there, who had convinced himself that this was his place and I was the guest. He looked around, touched the door frame, smiled, and when he placed the note on the table, he whispered something under his breath. The camera caught it. I turned the volume up and played it over and over. 4 words, barely audible, but clear. You're mine. You know. And for the first time, I saw not just a stalker, but a man who believed this was love. It's difficult to describe what it feels like to stare directly into the face of someone who has haunted you for months. Someone who has slipped between the cracks of your life like smoke, invisible, silent, and suddenly very, very real. I replayed that footage a dozen times that morning, each time trying to study him, memorize every detail of his face, the cadence of his movements, the shape of his smile. It wasn't the grin of a madman. That would have almost been easier. No, this was different. It was casual, familiar, like he'd just come home from work and was dropping off a note for his wife. That smile disturbed me more than anything else, because it confirmed what I had come to fear. The Moss didn't think he was doing anything wrong. The idea that someone like him could rationalize this level of intrusion, obsession, and control as affection, it made my skin crawl. I called my tech friend again and told him what I'd captured. I didn't give him too many details, only that I had a clear image now. I needed to know if we could trace him. Facial recognition, online matches, anything. He told me he'd look into it. I could hear the change in his tone. This wasn't just a creepy story anymore. It was evidence. It was real. I sent the file over, encrypted, time-stamped. My hands were still shaking when I hit send. I finally opened the note he left. It said, "You've been very brave. I think it's time we met properly." There was an address scribbled beneath the words. A part of the city I didn't recognize at first. Industrial, abandoned warehouses, and shipping lots, far from the public eye. The handwriting was the same as every note before it. Sharp, shaky, obsessive. I held the paper like it might burn me. The message was clear. He wanted this to become physical now. No more watching from the shadows. No more games. This was a summons, a shift in pace. And as much as every fiber in my body told me to turn this over to the police, let them handle it. A deeper, colder voice said otherwise, because I knew something else too. He was never going to stop, not until I stopped running. So I made a plan. I contacted a private investigator. I found one through a local network, someone who specialized in surveillance, tracking, counter-stalking. I met with her in a public place, gave her the brief version, showed her the footage, the journal, the photos, the notes. She didn't flinch. She'd seen worse, she said. She agreed to help. We devised a setup. I would go to the address. She and a backup would follow, hidden, recording everything. The goal wasn't confrontation. It was identification. Proof, something undeniable we could take to the authorities. Something that couldn't be dismissed as coincidence or paranoia. I didn't tell the police. I didn't want to risk being told not to go. I wanted to take control on my terms. If I could trap him in his own delusion, catch him showing his hand, I could end this. The address led to an old shipping depot. Fenced in, rusted, windows boarded up with plywood and graffiti. The lot was cracked and overgrown, weeds spilling out through the concrete like veins. I wore plain clothes, hoodie, jeans, sneakers, a body cam clipped discreetly to my jacket. I arrived just after sunset, heart pounding so hard it made my vision pulse. He was already there, standing near the entrance, hands in his coat pockets, like he'd been waiting forever. He looked exactly like the footage. Tall, thin, calm. That same hat pulled low, casting a shadow over half his face. When he saw me, he didn't smile right away. He just watched. For a long moment, we said nothing. The silence between us stretched until it became unbearable. Then he spoke. "I knew you'd come," he said. His voice was soft, warm, like a friend, like someone who genuinely believed this was a moment of mutual understanding. "You don't have to be afraid," he continued. "I know it was scary at first, but I've kept you safe. You don't even know how much I've protected you." I didn't respond. I kept my hands visible, tried to keep my breathing even. My body felt like it wasn't mine. Every instinct told me to run, but I stood still. "I watched him, you know," he added. The man who talked to you outside your building. The one with the coffee. You remember? February. I scared him off. He doesn't come by anymore. I blinked. There had been someone. A guy who struck up conversation on the sidewalk once. It hadn't even registered at the time. I know who belongs in your life, he said. And who doesn't? That's love, isn't it? Protecting someone, even when they don't understand. He stepped closer. I just wanted you to see me, to know me, because I know you. Every little thing, the way you smile when you read, the way you look out the window like you're dreaming about something better. You don't have to dream anymore. I'm here now. And then he reached into his coat. I tensed. But he didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a small box, wrapped in brown paper, tied with twine. He held it out to me. A gift, he said. You'll understand soon. I didn't take it. I didn't say anything. That's when the PI made her move. She stepped out from behind a shipping container, camera recording, badge visible. Her partner flanked the opposite side. He froze. For the first time since I'd seen him, his calm cracked. His eyes darted between us, hand tightening on the box. Then he ran. He didn't get far. They were ready. He was tackled within seconds, restrained, screaming now. Not words, just noise, animal sounds. Rage and confusion spilling out like a dam had finally broken. I stood there, staring at him as he thrashed and kicked and screamed, and I realized he wasn't a ghost. Not a monster, not even some invincible predator. He was a man, just a man. And now, he was caught. The arrest happened fast, but the aftermath was slow-grinding, procedural, and painfully incomplete. The police took him into custody that night, and I spent the next 8 hours giving statements, transferring files, surrendering devices. They combed through the journal he'd written, the videos, the footage from my own apartment, and the final conversation at the warehouse. The PI's audio was clean. His words were damning, delusional, obsessive, and most importantly, voluntary. He'd handed them a confession without ever realizing he was doing it. But the reality of what came next didn't feel like justice. Not exactly. Because there was no trial, not in the dramatic, satisfying sense. No courtroom showdown. Instead, they charged him with stalking, unlawful surveillance, breaking and entering. No violence. No physical harm. Which, legally, kept everything within a category that feels disturbingly small for how massive it had been in my life. He was evaluated, declared unfit, transferred to a psychiatric facility, and that was that. No closure, just paperwork. I was given a protective order, a direct contact at the local precinct, and a formal apology from the detective who initially brushed me off. But apologies don't turn your home back into a place where you feel safe. For weeks, I jumped at every sound. I couldn't sit near windows. I couldn't ride the busnet, just the 6, 40, any bus. Crowds made me anxious. Empty streets made me anxious. I moved. New apartment, different neighborhood. Second floor, no line of sight from the street. No patterns, no routines. I bought blackout curtains, changed my number, stopped using social media. I even cut ties with people I cared about, not because they did anything wrong, but because I couldn't stop imagining him finding me through them. That kind of fear doesn't obey logic. It rewrites it. But I kept the flash drives, the Polaroids, the notes. I kept the files from the PI and the footage from my own camera, not out of some morbid need to relive it, but because I had to know it was real. When something like this happens to you, the world starts to blur. You begin to doubt the sharpness of your own memory. Was that sound last night just the pipes? Was that person on the corner really just a stranger? Having proof a record became the only way I could stop the endless replay in my mind. And sometimes I still hear his voice. Not in my head, not like a hallucination, but in memories that play too clearly. I hear the way he said, "You're mine." You know, I hear the whisper at the warehouse. I hear the breath between his sentences. That calm, practiced rhythm he used like a scalpel. He wasn't the monster under the bed. He wasn't supernatural. He was a man, just a man. And somehow, that made it worse. Because it could happen again. Not with him, but someone else. Anyone else. I've come to understand that real horror isn't about ghosts or demons. It's about being seen in a way you'd never asked for, picked apart, studied, obsessed over by someone who thinks your life is theirs to narrate. It's the horror of losing your agency, your privacy, your normal. And it's the quiet kind. The kind that doesn't scream. It watches, waits, whispers. Now, I live quietly. I still don't ride the bus. I keep a camera in every room. I haven't dated since. And sometimes, late at night, when the city settles into that soft, eerie silence, I sit by the window just out of sight, and I listen, not for him, but for the space he left behind. And I remind myself, I survived, but I'll never be the same.